Your voice isn't just a sound you make. It's something far more ancient, far more powerful than we've ever been told. See, before there were tools, before there were words, before there was even fire, there was vibration. Before medicine, before machines, before language itself, humans understood something we've forgotten. Sound isn't just communication, it's transformation. The ancients didn't chant just to feel good. They sang to shift reality, to heal, to unlock something inside themselves. And one of them, Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom, left behind a secret. Not a legend, not a metaphor, a real method, a specific way of using your voice to tap into the deeper layers of your being, to wake up the energy that's been asleep inside you. And here's the wild part. This wasn't written in books. It wasn't carved into stone. It was hidden in tone, in how sound moves through your throat, your chest, your bones. And it's still there, in your body, waiting for you to remember. You've felt it. Maybe not consciously, but you have. That wave of calm that washes over you from a single note in a song. The chills you get from a voice that seems to touch your soul. That's not coincidence. That's a key turning in a lock. That's your system responding to something ancient, something real. And now, you're going to learn how to use it. Not just to feel better, but to remember who you really are. See, long before there were texts and teachings, there was frequency. Not just sound, not random noise, but deliberate, precise frequencies. And in the temples of ancient Kemet, what we now call Egypt, sound wasn't just music. It was a sacred science, a form of technology that worked on a spiritual level. At the center of this knowledge stood Thoth, not worshipped as a god for his power, but respected for his mastery. He understood something we're only just beginning to grasp again, that the universe didn't begin with a bang. It began with a tone, a pulse through the void, a vibration that birthed stars and shaped reality. And Thoth didn't just talk about it, he taught it, passed it down, not through texts, not in lectures, but through vibration, through chants, person to person, voice to voice. In the ancient mystery schools, sound wasn't entertainment, it was precise, measured, intentional. They didn't chant for fun, they didn't sing for praise, they used sound the way a surgeon uses a scalpel. Every syllable was tuned to a specific frequency. Every chant was designed to realign rhythms inside the body that had been knocked off course by trauma, illness, or spiritual drift. Because to them, the human body wasn't a machine. It was a resonant field. Your blood, your organs, your breath, all vibrating, all the time. And when something's out of tune, that's when disease shows up. And instead of reaching for pills or potions, they reached for sound. Not just any sound. The right sound. The right tone. At the right pitch. For exactly the right amount of time. Inside those temples, chants weren't just rituals. They were keys. Keys to unlock the gates between dimensions. Between body and spirit. Between the visible and the unseen. The most advanced initiates didn't speak casually. They trained for years to be able to say a single word in alignment. Because when they did, when they chanted in the inner chambers, surrounded by stone, in total darkness, something happened. The energy field of the initiate would shift. It wasn't theory. It wasn't belief. It was felt. A deep, cellular remembering. A frequency that stirred something older than memory. The body wouldn't respond with words, it would respond with sensation. Heat, stillness, tears, a knowing too vast for thought. Some of this knowledge was so powerful, it was kept secret, not to hoard power, but to protect the teachings. Because some truths need context, they need preparation, they need initiation. And that's why we created Insights Academy, our free newsletter. It's where we share the deeper layers of these practices, the ones that are too sacred, too censored for platforms like YouTube. When you sign up, you'll also receive a free digital copy of the Kabbalion, one of the foundational texts of Hermetic wisdom. That's our gift to you. The link is below. Because what Thoth shared wasn't a religion. It wasn't about dogma or belief. It was a set of tools to wake up the real you. He taught that your voice isn't just sound, it's a bridge, a link between your body and your spirit. And when used with awareness, your voice becomes something much more powerful than expression. It becomes creation. Because when you chant, you're not just making noise, you're shaping energy, you're accessing dimensions of yourself that language can't even describe. And you're going to learn how to do it from within. But here's the thing, sound doesn't just heal, it can also disturb. That's why this ancient knowledge wasn't shared with everyone. Because the same vibration that brings you into alignment can throw you further out of it if used carelessly. That's why in the mystery schools, it wasn't just about the words or the notes, it was about the breath behind them, the intention, the stillness between syllables. This wasn't performance, it was precision. When they chanted, it wasn't for beauty, it was for alignment. And when they chanted for exactly 33 seconds, something happened, something unexplainable. You couldn't hear it with your ears, you felt it with your whole body. Like the cells remembered something. Like a piece of you that had been asleep suddenly sat up and opened its eyes. This practice wasn't reserved for priests or hidden behind closed temple doors. Thoth taught that everyone was given a voice for a reason. Not just to talk, not just to survive, but to activate something. The real question is, will you ever use yours the way it was designed to be used? Think about this. Before humans had fire, before we made tools out of stone, we had sound. Resonance, the first medicine, the first language, the first ritual. Ancient healers didn't carry bags of herbs or stacks of scrolls. They didn't even need words. They carried their breath, their voice, and a deep inner knowing passed down through vibration. Because they knew what modern science is just now proving, sound doesn't just carry information, it changes form. It reshapes matter, and it works on you the same way. Thoth's teachings weren't just mystical poetry, they were blueprints. Technical, repeatable, powerful. Sound was used like math, like engineering. Healing wasn't superstition, it was structured. Every part of your body has a frequency, your heart, your liver, your brain, even your bones. And when those parts fall out of resonance, that's when things start to go wrong. You don't need fixing, you need retuning. And the instrument, your own voice. Chanting, in the ancient world, wasn't religious fluff. It wasn't praise, it wasn't theatrical, it was a science of sound. They discovered that your body reacts to tone like water, reacts to ripples. Low frequencies move deep into the bones. High tones activate the brain. Certain syllables soothe the nervous system. Others? They unlock emotional memory buried so deep it bypasses thought entirely. They weren't guessing, they were testing, refining, mapping it all out. The chants used in those temples weren't random sounds. They were like equations, sonic algorithms, encoded with meaning and geometry. If you hit the right sound, with the right breath, at the right moment, your body responded. Organs relaxed, energy flowed again. The mind went quiet. It wasn't magic, it was resonance. And here's the kicker, this isn't something that belongs in ancient temples or distant myths. You felt it yourself. Every time a song gave you goosebumps, every time a note made you cry and you didn't know why, every time music moved you in a way words couldn't explain. That was it. That was the echo of the code, a part of you recognizing something ancient. You just didn't know how to use it yet. That's what Thoth offered. Not entertainment, not metaphor, mechanics, spiritual mechanics. He said your voice, when used with presence and awareness, becomes a tuning fork for your soul. You can clear trauma. You can awaken memory. You can restore your natural rhythm. Modern life? It buries all this. We're flooded with noise. Mechanical tones, fake frequencies, digital distractions, all pulling us out of our natural harmony. And we try to fix it with more information, more content, more stimulation. But what if the answer isn't more? What if the answer is you? Your voice, your breath, your silence. What if the most advanced healing technology has been with you all along, sitting unused in your chest? What if your own vibration is the key? Here's what taught: healing doesn't come from outside. It starts when you return to your original frequency. And the only sound that can do that is your own. That's the real secret. No one else can sing your song. No one else can vibrate your code. No tool, no guru, no system can do what your voice can do when it's fully aligned. Your voice is both the key and the code. In the temples of Thoth, the voice wasn't something you just used casually. It was sacred. The priests didn't rush to speak. They didn't chant on command. They trained for years just to say one syllable correctly, because they knew the power wasn't in how loud you were or how many times you repeated a chant. The real power was in presence. When your voice aligns with your breath, with your body, with your intention, something ancient comes through. Not your personality, not your ego, but the original tone of your being. And when that tone rises, not through your mouth, but through your entire system, you feel it. It's not a thought, it's not a concept, it's a knowing, one that bypasses your mind completely and rushes into your bones. That's what the chants were for, not to entertain the gods, but to awaken the divine within you. And here's the part nobody tells you. You don't need to be in a temple to begin. You don't need robes, rituals, or spiritual status. All you need is a breath, a sound, and the willingness to listen, not just to the sound you make, but to what rises in the silence that follows. Because healing doesn't come from effort, it comes from tuning. And your voice, it's the most sacred instrument you'll ever hold. Now let's go deeper. Imagine those ancient temples, not the public ones, but the ones hidden far below, deep underground. No sunlight, no statues, just stone, darkness, and silence. That's where initiates went to prepare, not to chant yet, just to forget, to release the noise of the outer world, the labels, the stories, the false identities. In that quiet, something subtle would begin to stir. Not thought, not emotion, but vibration, and only once that inner silence settled would the chant begin. One voice, low, deliberate, not performing, remembering. These weren't songs, they were vibrational keys, sounds designed not to echo off the walls, but to wake up the soul. Because the soul doesn't live in the mind, it lives in frequency, and you can't think your way to it. You have to sing, but not the way we think of singing today. Not for beauty, not for likes, not for applause. This was invocation, activation. It was soul tech. Each chant was crafted using tones that corresponded to specific energy centers in the body. Some opened the root, the base of your spine. Others opened the heart. Some reached the mind. And when sung for the exact amount of time, exactly 33 seconds, it wasn't symbolic. It was structural. It opened a kind of portal, a shift not only in your energy but in how you perceive reality. But here's what's important. This wasn't mystical fluff. It was a science, a spiritual science. They may not have used our words like biology or neurochemistry, but they understood that vibration isn't poetic, it's literal. It shapes everything. So when you chant with full presence, your voice doesn't just make sound, it creates a field, a resonant space where the usual rules start to bend, where the deeper part of you starts to emerge, and in that space, trauma can dissolve, clarity can land, and ancient memory, the kind that's older than your lifetime, begins to surface, because the soul was never lost, it was never broken, it was always humming, just beneath the distractions, waiting. But most people never hear it, because we never get quiet enough. And that's why chanting, real chanting, isn't about being a good singer. It's about alignment. It's the bridge between breath and spirit, between matter and memory. And when you use your voice in this way, something begins to shift. You stop feeling like a person trying to do something. You start feeling like a tuning fork, vibrating in harmony with something cosmic, something ancient, something true. This is why initiates chanted daily, not to impress the gods, but because each chant peeled away another layer of illusion. Each vibration cleared another distortion, and little by little, they stopped identifying with the noise of the world and started remembering who they really were. Not a name, not a role, not a label, but a being of tone, of presence, of power. And not because someone told them so, but because they felt it, vibrating in their bones. Even now, after thousands of years of noise, distraction, and forgetfulness, this technology still works. Sure, the chants might sound different across cultures. The syllables might shift, the tones might vary, but the principle, it's universal. Your voice is the bridge, and when you chant with clear intention, with presence and stillness, you're not just soothing your nerves, you're not just calming your mind, you're activating your soul, literally. The sound spirals out from your chest, not randomly, but geometrically, like sacred architecture made of vibration. It doesn't stop at your skin. It moves beyond, out into the invisible layers of your being, aligning things you didn't even know were out of tune. And that's the key here. This isn't mysticism, it's remembrance. Because once you've felt that resonance, once you've heard the tone that feels like home, nothing else satisfies. You realize something kind of unsettling, that most of what you thought was you, the stress, the busyness, the overthinking, was just noise. Layers of distraction covering up your real signal. But the signal never left. It was just waiting for you to quiet down long enough to hear it again. And the big secret, it was never hidden in temples or scrolls. It's been in your breath, your throat, your stillness this whole time, just waiting for you to come back. And for centuries, people have written off sound as primitive. They've labeled it as mystical, fringe, unscientific. Something for monks, or shamans, or weirdos on the edges of society. But here's the twist. Modern science is finally catching up to what the ancients always knew. Sound doesn't just accompany life, it shapes it, it builds it, it rebuilds it. Look at cymatics, the science of making sound visible. When you play a specific frequency into a surface covered with sand or water, the particles rearrange into perfect geometric patterns. Raise the frequency, and the patterns get more complex, more beautiful, more ordered. This isn't magic, it's resonance. And the exact same thing happens inside your body, because you're not static. You're not just skin and muscle. You're a field, a living, breathing network of frequencies, constantly vibrating. And when that field gets distorted by stress, fear, trauma, toxins, or ironically, silence, you don't just feel tired or anxious. You become dissonant. You lose harmony with yourself. But when the right sound enters at the right time, not from an app, not from a device, but from your own voice, it doesn't add anything to you. It doesn't fix you. It restores you. That's not just spiritual wishful thinking. That's data. Sound affects water molecules, and you're made mostly of water. Your nervous system synchronizes to rhythm. Your immune function responds to vibration. Your breath deepens. Stress drops. And walls inside you, some you didn't even know were there, begin to soften. All from sound. But again, the most potent source of that sound isn't a machine. It's not a singing bowl. It's not even a song on a playlist. It's you. It's your voice. And that's what Thoth was really teaching, that your voice isn't just a tool to express thoughts. It's an engine of transformation. It generates fields. It shapes energy. It creates coherence in your system. But only when used consciously. The ancients didn't chant randomly. They paid close attention to how sound affected the body, the breath, the subtle layers beyond what we see. They knew vowels weren't just letters, they were vibrational codes. That a single note, held with full presence, could form a standing wave inside the chest, aligning the heart with the body and the body with the soul. This wasn't a spiritual metaphor. It was precision tuning. And maybe we think we're modern and advanced now, but in many ways, we're only just rediscovering what was once common knowledge, that your body is music, a living symphony of electrical and vibrational systems, and when the music becomes chaotic, you feel it. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. That's when people reach for noise, for distraction, for stimulation, because silence, real silence, feels unbearable when you've forgotten how to resonate. But the truth is, sound, when used with presence, guides you back to the signal beneath the noise, back to coherence, back to yourself. And here's the part nobody talks about. You don't need expensive tools, complicated apps, or advanced technology to do this. You already have the most advanced vibrational instrument on the planet, your own voice. When used with intention, your voice becomes a medicine that's more powerful than anything external. Why? Because it carries not just sound, but presence. And presence, when fully embodied, is the most healing force there is. Modern neuroscience now backs this up. Studies show that chanting activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of you responsible for rest, recovery, and healing. It lowers heart rate, reduces stress hormones like cortisol, sharpens clarity. MRI scans have even shown that specific frequencies used in chanting light up parts of the brain connected to self-awareness, compassion, and feelings of unity. So while society was busy mocking sound healing as woo, the machines were confirming what the temples already knew. Chanting doesn't take you away from reality. It brings you back to what's real. But here's the tragedy. Most people will never experience this. Because we've been trained, conditioned, to believe that healing is something external, something you buy, something someone else gives you. We've been told that real power lies outside of us, in systems, in substances, in authority. But Thoth's secret was the opposite. It was subtle. It whispered through the cracks of the pyramids. It echoed in the silence between your breaths. It was always about resonance. And resonance doesn't lie. It doesn't perform. It either aligns or it doesn't. That's why when you chant, you must not perform. You're not trying to impress. You're not imitating anyone else. Let the tone rise from within you, not as a sound, but as a remembering. Because your voice will find the frequency if you let it. You'll feel it when it happens. Not in your ears, but in your cells. And that's the most honest part of all this. The body doesn't lie. When vibration aligns, the entire system starts to reorganize. Pain begins to soften. Memory returns, not the kind tied to facts or dates, but the deeper memory. The one that reminds you who you are underneath it all. And when that happens, when your soul begins to hum again, you'll know this isn't fantasy. It's nature. And nature doesn't ask for belief. It just asks for your presence. Sound awakens, but silence seals. This was one of Thoth's greatest teachings, and also one of the most misunderstood. We treat silence like absence, like a void, something to fill, to avoid. But in the ancient temples, silence was not the end of sound. It was its fulfillment. After every chant, the sacred halls would fall into complete stillness. Not because the ritual was over, but because the transformation had only just begun. They knew something we've forgotten, that integration doesn't happen with more input. It happens with space. It happens when you allow the vibration to settle, to root, to become part of you. That's why after every chant, the initiates didn't jump up and start talking. They didn't reach for interpretation. They sat, sometimes for hours. They let the sound land. They let the energy reorganize them from the inside out. And that silence? It wasn't passive. It was alive. Because when the external noise drops away, the internal current finally has space to rise. You felt this, even if you didn't recognize it at the time. That moment after a powerful song, when you can't move. That pause after someone speaks a truth so deep that everything else fades away. That stillness after crying, when the body feels raw but real. That's the sacred pause. It's not emptiness. It's presence. It's your system realigning around a new frequency. Just like a drum still hums after being struck, your body continues to vibrate after chanting, and if you're constantly moving, distracting, scrolling, talking, you miss it. You miss the arrival, because that's what the silence is, the arrival. It's when the magic finishes writing itself into your cells. It's when healing stops being a moment and starts becoming your new baseline. And science is catching up here too. Post-chant silence has been shown to drop the brain into theta wave states, the state connected to deep healing, memory access, and spiritual awareness. The nervous system calms, the heart rhythm stabilizes, stress chemicals dissolve. The shift is measurable, but it only happens when we stop, when we let go, when we trust that stillness is not the absence of life, but its deepest expression. And this right here is why silence matters even more than we think. Because when the chant ends, when the tone fades, and you sit in stillness, that's when the alchemy happens. But here's the problem. We live in a world terrified of silence. Every moment is filled, every gap stuffed with noise, conversations, media, notifications, background music, constant stimulation. And because of that, we've forgotten how to listen. Not just with our ears, but with our being. The ancient initiates didn't see silence as a break. They saw it as a sacred phase of the practice, as important as the chant itself. Why? Because they understood something that seems so simple, yet so often missed. Transformation doesn't happen when you speak. It happens when you listen to what was just spoken. It's just like music. What gives each note its power isn't just the sound, it's the space between the sounds. Without pauses, music turns to chaos. Without silence, your energy stays scattered. That's why after chanting, even if it's just for 33 seconds, the practice isn't over. That's the beginning of the real work. That's the moment to sit, to breathe, to feel. Let the silence speak. Because it will, if you let it. And what it says can't be put into words. It's not mental, it's cellular. It's the kind of truth that speaks not to your intellect, but to your body. In the ancient schools, initiates would often chant inside stone chambers tuned to specific resonances. These rooms were designed to amplify and reflect sound in very specific ways. But once the chant ended, no one moved, no one spoke, no one asked, "What did that mean?" They sat, still, present, because in those moments, the energetic body was recalibrating. The noise of the mind dissolved, and what remained was pure awareness. And in that awareness came guidance, clarity, healing, not as concepts, but as experience. That's the real gift of silence. It's not the absence of sound, it's the emergence of truth. And now, finally, modern science is starting to catch up. Studies show that intentional silence, real stillness, can reset your nervous system, lower inflammation, and even regrow brain cells. Yes, you read that right. Silence regenerates your brain. It's not passive, it's not lazy, it's deeply active. The parasympathetic nervous system, your body's natural healing state, only fully activates when you slow down, stop speaking, and enter silence. So when paired with intentional chanting, silence becomes the final ingredient in the healing formula. First, the sound activates. Then, the silence seals. But that doesn't mean silence is easy. In fact, for most people, it's deeply uncomfortable. Because when the noise stops, what rises? The stuff you've been avoiding. Old emotions, buried grief, unprocessed fear. But this isn't bad. It's not punishment. It's exactly the point. The silence doesn't create your discomfort. It simply reveals it. And once it's revealed, it can be released. Think of it like this. The chant shakes the cage. The silence opens the door. That's what Thoth was teaching. Not worship, not religion, but reclamation. Giving you tools that reconnect you to the power already inside you, your voice, your breath, your awareness. And silence, that's part of the equation. Always has been. Because the most powerful moments don't happen in the sound. They happen in the pause that follows. That's when the energy shifts. That's when the body realigns. That's when the spirit whispers back. But we've been told action is everything. That we have to do more, say more, produce more. But here's the truth. Some of the most transformative moments in your life will happen when you do absolutely nothing. When you simply sit, breathe, be. That's where sound and silence meet. That's where real alchemy begins. You might not be able to explain it, but your body will understand. Your soul will know. So the next time you chant, even softly, even imperfectly, don't rush to move on. Don't scroll, speak, or distract. Sit with it. Let the vibration settle. Let the silence speak. Because in that space, something happens. Something invisible. Something invisible. Something undeniable. Healing doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. And those whispers? They're loud enough to rebuild your entire reality. The deeper you go into this, the clearer it becomes. This wasn't just Thoth's secret. It was our inheritance. Because long before nations had borders, long before religions fought over beliefs, humanity shared something even more ancient than language, a sound, a frequency, a vibration. And if you strip away the layers of culture, geography, and time, you'll hear it. A low, persistent hum beneath the surface of every ancient tradition, from the of the Vedic sages, to the deep chants of Tibetan monks, to the tonal languages of Africa, to the whispered breath tones of Native Americans. They were all singing the same song, not with the same words, but with the same resonance. And that's the key. These weren't artistic expressions. These weren't just rituals. They were tools, ancient technologies of alignment. Because these cultures understood something that science is just now confirming, the entire universe operates on frequency. From your heartbeat to the spin of galaxies, it's all vibration. And when you understand vibration, you hold the blueprint of reality itself. Take the Vedas, some of the oldest spiritual texts on earth. Their very first line, "In the beginning was sound." Not metaphor, not poetry, a fact. The sacred syllable, Om, wasn't just a chant, it was a sonic representation of creation, a tone that when sung with full presence resonates through every cell. And halfway across the world in ancient Egypt, Thoth designed temples where initiates would chant specific vowel sounds into rooms engineered to amplify exact frequencies, tuned to match the body's energy centers. Not symbolically. Literally. These weren't random chambers. These were sonic devices. Spaces built to resonate, because they understood that sound wasn't decoration, it was transformation. Even in Christian mysticism, the idea is there. In the beginning was the Word. But the original Greek word used was logos. And logos doesn't just mean word, it means divine order, divine reason, the underlying vibration that holds everything together. Different cultures, different names, same truth. They weren't copying each other, they were remembering the same thing. That the universe was not spoken into being, it was sung. And here's the most mind-blowing part. This wasn't isolated to myth or belief. It was embedded in daily life. Look at the Aboriginal songlines, literal maps sung across the land, passed from generation to generation. These weren't bedtime lullabies. They were navigation systems. Melodies that described geography, direction, even water sources. They didn't just walk the land, they sang the land into memory. And when modern researchers looked into this, they realized something stunning. These songs worked. Because the land itself, the rocks, the trees, the paths, responded to vibration. It was like the earth had been tuned to receive the song. And now, cymatics, the science of visualizing sound, gives us the how. When sound is played through a medium like sand or water, it shapes matter into patterns, not random ones. Geometric, ordered, beautiful ones. Raise the pitch and the shape becomes more complex, more refined, more coherent. This is resonance in action. This is how sound builds reality. And if sound can do that to water and sand, Imagine what it's doing to you. Because your body isn't solid, it's a vibrating field. Your cells respond to tone. Your nervous system aligns with rhythm. Your breath follows sound. This is what Thoth taught, that your voice is not separate from this process. It's a part of it. When you chant with awareness, you're not just making noise, you're tuning back into the original signal, the one that existed before your name, your story, your trauma. You're reconnecting with the frequency that formed you. And that's why chanting doesn't belong to any one religion, culture, or guru. You don't need to be Egyptian. You don't need to be a monk. You don't even need to know what the words mean, because it's not about meaning. It's about resonance. That's why a mantra you don't understand can bring you to tears. Why a tone you've never heard can give you goosebumps. Why music, real music, can move you more than any lecture or sermon ever could. It's not magic. It's biology. It's memory. It's you, remembering what you are. Let's bring it even closer now. Because everything we've talked about, the chants, the temples, the tones, it's not about the past. It's not about myth. It's about you, here, now. Because your body isn't just something you live in. It's an instrument, one that's been waiting, sometimes for years, to be tuned again. And the most powerful tuning fork, your voice. When you chant, even if it's a single syllable, even if it's soft, even if you don't know what you're doing, something in you starts to shift. You may feel heat in your chest, or a tingle down your spine, or tears rising for no reason at all. That's not random. That's not emotion. That's activation. That's your energetic body responding to the tone it's been waiting for. Because this isn't about singing pretty. It's about vibrating authentically. You could chant OM, or ah, or ah, or ah ah, or hum a tone that feels right, and still access the same core principle. Why? Because the exact syllable isn't the secret. Presence is, breath is, stillness is, intention is everything. That's why in the temples, priests didn't speak just because they had something to say. They spoke only when their words could heal, align, or awaken. They knew that the energy behind the sound was what mattered, not the sound itself. And you don't need to train for decades to start using this. You can begin now, right where you are. No special equipment, no initiation. Just a breath, a sound, and the willingness to listen. Because when your voice is aligned, when your sound carries your full presence, it stops being just your voice. It becomes a key, one that unlocks not just your body, but your blueprint. That's why people who practice chanting consistently start to notice changes that go beyond the physical. Yes, their nervous systems calm down. Yes, their breath deepens. Yes, sleep improves and stress fades. But something deeper happens too. They begin to remember themselves, not the roles they play, not the identity they've been taught, but the part of them that's older than time. The part that sings without language. The part that knows without logic. The part that hums beneath every silence. This is why, even in moments where you don't feel spiritual or strong or certain, your voice is still there, waiting to reconnect you, to remind you. And this is also why the ancients guarded this knowledge, not because it was secret, but because it was sacred. They knew that chanting wasn't entertainment, it wasn't performance, it was surgery for the soul. When used with precision, a single tone could unlock lifetimes of stuck emotion, could melt patterns of pain that no therapy had ever touched, could bring tears of release, joy, or grief, without a single thought attached. Because sound bypasses the mind. It speaks straight to the field. That's also why the system we live in rarely encourages you to explore this. Because a human being who understands that their own breath can change their energy, that their own voice can heal their trauma, that stillness is more powerful than stimulation, that person becomes sovereign. They stop being easy to control, not because they become loud or chaotic, but because they become tuned. They stop chasing answers outside of themselves. They start feeling the truth inside, and that makes them ungovernable, not rebellious, just deeply awake. That's the real reason so much of this wisdom was buried. Not because it didn't work, but because it did. Because when someone reclaims their vibration, they stop consuming. They stop performing. They remember. And when you remember who you are, when you feel it vibrating through your bones, you stop looking for permission to be. You just are. That's the kind of healing that can't be sold. That's the kind of power that can't be packaged. And it starts not with belief, but with resonance. So if you've ever felt that quiet pull when someone sings from their soul, if you've ever felt that subtle thrum in your chest when a chant rises in the air, if you've ever paused for just a moment and thought, wait, something about this feels like home, that wasn't coincidence. That was memory, ancient memory, waking up. And now we arrive at the turning point, not just in this message, but maybe in your life. Because once you've felt what this kind of sound can do, once your own voice sends a ripple through your system that calms your mind, softens your heart, or stirs something ancient, there's no going back. Not because you're forced to change, but because the old world just doesn't fit anymore. You've already heard the deeper tone. You've already touched the signal beneath the noise. And once that happens, you can't unfeel it. This is why Thoth didn't ask to be worshipped. He didn't offer dogma, he offered direction. He said, the voice is given to every soul for a reason. He didn't say some souls, he didn't say only the chosen. He said, every soul. The only question is, will you use it? Not to impress, not to entertain, but to realign. Because when you chant, even for just 33 seconds, you're doing more than making sound. You're invoking memory. You're activating a language older than words, the language of resonance. And no one else can do that for you. Not your teacher, not your healer, not even Thoth himself. Because the sound that unlocks your deepest self is the sound only you can make. And the reason you haven't been told this before, it's not because you're not ready. It's because systems lose control when people start singing their way home. That's why this knowledge was hidden. Not to keep you out, but to keep it sacred. Because the voice, your voice, when used with consciousness, is the most divine tool a human has. It shapes reality. It sculpts the invisible. It tunes not just your body, but your field, your spirit, your soul. And here's what's beautiful. You've already felt it. You've had moments, maybe brief, maybe unexplainable, where a sound hit you just right and your whole being responded. Goosebumps, tears, stillness, a sense of returning, even if you didn't know what you were returning to. That wasn't random. That was your system remembering. Because beneath everything, beneath your name, your story, your roles, you are vibration, you are resonance, you are sound. And the ancients knew this. That's why they didn't separate science and spirit like we do today. They didn't divide the physical and the mystical. To them, it was all one. They knew the stars didn't just shine, they sang. They knew atoms weren't just particles, they were pulses. They knew that everything was organized by frequency. So when Thoth taught chanting, he wasn't just teaching magic, he was teaching alignment. He was giving people a way to return to the rhythm of the cosmos. And here's what he never said, but always implied. Your voice doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to sound good to anyone else. It only needs to be real. Because when your voice is raw, unfiltered, unapologetic, that's when the ancient code wakes up. Not because you followed the rules, but because you remembered. And when you sing from that place, from that center, from that stillness, you unlock something no one can give you and no one can take away. You activate your inner temple. You don't have to go to Egypt. You don't have to find a guru. It lives in your chest, in your breath, in your silence. And once you feel it, once your soul hums again, the distractions of the world lose their grip. That's the real reason chanting was feared, why the teachings were erased, why singing your truth is now treated like rebellion. Because systems don't fear loud people. They fear tuned people. They fear resonance. Because resonance can't be controlled. It can't be bought. It can't be broken. So chant, even if your voice shakes, even if you don't know what it means, even if you're afraid of what might come up, because the song isn't waiting for perfection, it's waiting for you. And now, here you are, not at the end, but at the doorway. Because this isn't really about learning something new. It's about remembering something old, something essential, something that's been humming inside you all along. The teachings of Thoth weren't hidden behind secret passwords or locked away in sacred texts. They were placed somewhere much closer, somewhere more intimate. They were embedded in your body, in your breath, in your throat, in the quiet space behind your ribs that expands every time you sing without holding back. And for thousands of years, this secret was protected, not because it was too complicated, but because it was too powerful to be misused. That's why only initiates were taught. That's why they sat in silence for weeks before even speaking a syllable. Because when you use the voice with consciousness, it becomes divine, not metaphorically. Actually divine, not to control, but to remember. To remember what? That your sound sculpts the invisible, that your words shape reality, that your chant isn't just energy, it's architecture. Every time you open your mouth with full presence, you're not just making noise, you're drawing blueprints, you're shaping form, you're tuning yourself back to the frequency you were born to carry. And you've felt it before, those unexplainable moments when a song moved you so deeply you stopped breathing, when a chant hit your body in a way that made your skin shiver, when a single note made you cry and you didn't know why. That wasn't coincidence. That was your system reacting to the original code, the one beneath your stories, beneath your wounds, beneath your identity. Because underneath it all, you are frequency. And you've always been. The ancients knew this. They didn't draw a line between physics and spirit. They saw the universe not as a static machine, but as a song, a living, breathing melody in motion. The stars singing, the cells pulsing, the atoms dancing in rhythm. And you're part of that song. You're not outside it. You're not separate from it. You are an instrument within the symphony. So when you chant, truly chant, with breath, with stillness, with intention, you don't just create sound, you align with the source of sound itself. And here's the most important part. Your voice doesn't have to sound spiritual. It doesn't have to match anyone else's pitch. It doesn't have to be beautiful by performance standards. What matters is that it's yours, raw, real, aligned. Because when you stop performing and start remembering, your voice becomes a bridge, a portal, a power source. And what happens next? You step into a version of yourself that doesn't need to be convinced, doesn't need to be validated, doesn't need to seek answers externally anymore. Because you've felt it, you've vibrated it. And once you've tasted that level of alignment, no system, no belief, no fear can pull you back into the old paradigm. This is why chanting has always been feared by authority, why mystical lineages were erased, why speaking your truth, literally speaking, vibrating, is treated like rebellion. Because when humans start to resonate, they stop being programmable. They stop buying into lies. They stop living from survival and start vibrating from source. And maybe, just maybe, that's what's happening right now. Because the silence is cracking, the old systems are breaking, and the song is coming back. And if you're still here, still listening, still reading, it's because something in you already knows. You're not waiting for permission. You're remembering your signal. And once you begin this practice, once you chant for even 33 seconds, your system will shift. Not dramatically, not explosively, but subtly, like something inside you sitting up straighter, like a quiet, steady hum that says, this is who I've always been. And if you want to go deeper, if you want to explore the parts of this practice we can't share here, we've built a place for that. It's called Insights Academy. It's a free newsletter, no fluff, no spam, just unfiltered teachings, ancient tools, and sacred knowledge once reserved only for initiates. When you join today, you'll also get a free digital copy of the Kybalion, not as a bonus, but as a tool to carry forward. The link is in the description. Because if this resonated, you're ready. Not because I said so, but because your body said so. Your frequency has already changed. You don't need to become someone new. You just need to remember who you've always been. Sing for 33 seconds. Let the silence follow. And watch what shifts. This isn't about sounding good. It's about vibrating real. It's about rewriting reality with your own voice. And once you begin, you'll never need the world's permission again. You'll have your resonance. You'll have your song. And your song knows the way home.